We are called to be. Ah, yes, we are called to be the glory that everyone can see. Thank you so much, Misa. Thank you, Faith Rivera, for that beautiful song. And I want to speak to you today, continuing with the topic that I started 2 weeks ago on expanding consciousness. So 2 weeks ago, it was out with the old, and this week we're talking about in with the new. The understanding that they're all part of a regenerative cycle. You cannot have one without the other. And it certainly has been a really powerful week for In with the New. Our very own senator from the great state of California, Kamala Harris, has been nominated as the vice president for the Democratic Party. The first time a black woman, an Indian woman, first time a black and Indian woman has been nominated. And this is a living example of what I have been speaking to. This is the demonstration in time and in space of a new understanding actually showing up, because Kamala didn't just appear yesterday. There has been a lot of work going on in terms of shifting consciousness in order to enable this moment where she could actually stand. The idea became a demonstration. And that is happening on the macro level, certainly all around us right now in our country and on the political and what's going on in our world. And what I want to speak to today is how that operates on the micro, how that's operating within each one of us. So if you remember from last week, I talked about this regenerative cycle. You cannot have, the new without letting go of what was. And so this process of releasing, of being receptive and open, of cultivating a new awareness, which then leads us into a new way of being, and that eventually leads us to a new status quo. And I have to say that I personally am looking forward to the day when having a black woman be a presidential candidate or a vice presidential candidate is the status quo. So I wanted to start today with sharing these two wonderful young men that I found on YouTube. Their subscription, if you subscribe to them on YouTube, and I would suggest it, they're so much fun. It's Twins, the New Trend. And these two young men had decided that their music world was a little small. It was pretty much rap with a little bit of church music thrown in, and they wanted to expand their understanding. So they stepped into what we would call beginner's mind in a really proactive way. So they went on YouTube and said, hey, what should we listen to? What music is out there that we may have never heard before? And people responded, as people do, and told them what music they should listen to. And so their entire channel is filled with them listening to these amazing songs, amazing artists that were a lot of them big before these two were even born, listening to them for the very first time. And the one I want to share with you right now, a section of it, is the one that went viral this past week, which is them listening for the first time to In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins. So as most of us who are old enough can certainly remember, and if you have never heard this song before, you need to go listen to the whole song, because this is just a little snippet of it. But there's this slow burn to this song. So it starts off really sort of slow, and it gently starts to build. And where we're going to drop in and watch these two as they experience this song for the first time is at about the 3-minute mark in the song. And if you do know this song, you know that there is something coming at the end of this song that they have no idea about. So here are Twins, the New Trend.
I remember, don't worry. How could I ever forget the first time?
Okay, family?
The last time we ever met.
Yeah. Okay.
The hurt doesn't show, but the pain still grows. Some strangers to you and me. I can feel it coming at night.
He said, y'all sleeping on me. Let's wake him up. You heard he said, felt like y'all sleeping on me. Let's wake him up. Come on, he ain't kept that.
Cold.
Hey, that was cold.
I gotta
man.
download this to my
That
phone.
was cold how you
man.
did that. I ain't gonna lie, Phil. You got me
I
on
ain't
that.
never seen
You
nobody
got me on
drop,
that one, man.
I ain't never seen nobody drop a beat
like
3
that.
minutes in a song.
He dropped the beat at the end of the song, man.
He killed
I'm
it.
dead, bro. But hey, that's funny.
That was good, man. That's unique.
Most
I ain't never
definitely,
seen
that
it.
is true. I never seen somebody drop a beat at the end of the song, bro.
That's
But
crazy.
hey, it is what it is.
Let's wake him up.
I have seen that clip. The whole thing, it's totally worth watching the whole thing. There's something about their joy. There's something about the fact that they just are allowing the music to move them. They are allowing themselves to have an experience without having decided ahead of time how it is that they're going to react or how it is that they're going to respond. And it is, I have to admit too, it's a lot of fun to watch them be exposed for the first time to the greats like Freddie Mercury and Annie Lennox, and to watch them experience those singers, Aerosmith and the Rolling Stones, for the very first time. And it's almost like I get to experience it for the very first time. So they're twins. Fred is the one who is quoted as saying, "There's more than just rap out there. There's so much more than I ever thought." And so my invitation to you right now is to just ask yourself to fill in rap with anything that comes to your own mind. There's more than just classical music out there. There's so much more than I ever thought. There's more than just, I know my audience, musical theater out there. More than I ever thought. What is it that you would be willing to stand in that beginner's mind? And what's so beautiful is that while you watch them, they'll just say, "Hey everybody, what is going on with that? I don't know what that means." They have no problem standing in their beginner's mind and allowing for this really beautiful interchange to happen in the comment sections of their YouTube video. And there's something about that that is infectious, because we can see their love of music transcends any of their assumptions about what it is that they would like or not like. So what they are doing, and what the invitation for all of us is that they're cultivating a new awareness. They are choosing in a very specific and pointed way to cultivate a new understanding. For them, it's around music. For you, it could be around anything. It could be around your health. It could be around your relationships. And there are certain elements that you can stand in. They're the principles of cultivating a new awareness. So the first one, which I mentioned, is beginner's mind. Just being willing to come to something as if you don't know it, as if it is a clean slate. And from that space, you free yourself up to actually be in what my Qigong teacher actually calls a state of relaxed intention. So it's not an intention to actually get somewhere specific. It's not an intention to accomplish X, Y, or Z. It's a very relaxed intentionality to be open and receptive and listening to what is authentically arising from within you. And then there is spontaneous actions that arise, like them literally dancing in their chairs. And the third piece is probably the hardest, at least I know it is for me. Underdoing. My Qigong teacher will tell you to 70%. Now, I am somebody who comes at things 125%. So the idea that I am being invited into underdoing, into not doing the full out of what I am capable, that I am being invited into actually doing less than my full capacity, is been challenging and incredibly revelatory, because it's in that space, it's in that 30% that I'm not doing, that all of a sudden I am literally making room for the divinity that I am, for the innate wholeness that I am. You can call it the mystery, you can call it whatever works for you. The divine understanding of yourself gets to burble forth, and you surprise yourself. And you do things and you move in ways that you have never moved before, that you have never spoken in before, that you never would have thought were part of the vocabulary of your life. Because when we're underdoing, we're allowing ourselves to break free from some of that habitual doingness. We already know how to do it that way. What if we opened ourselves up and allowed something else to appear? And yes, there's a vulnerability in that, right? There's a vulnerability in the fact that we don't know, and we can feel a little sort of like, what's going on? I'm not quite sure what's going on. And that it can feel almost like a chasm, because you're moving from what was, and there you don't know what you're stepping into. And so you're invited into this leap. I found this image, which I just love, because I really feel like it speaks to in the undoing is where you create the potential for you to leap into arenas and directions that you never even thought were possible before. And this is where new ways of being start to arise within you. This is where you see behavioral changes. This is where you actually see shifts in the external world. So it begins with this internal understanding, and then that then expresses outside of us. And as we are doing this, we are literally rewiring our entire neurological network. So I really want you to think about the fact that our brain doesn't just reside in our skull. Our brain is the neurological network that is our entire body. And that body, mind, wisdom, intelligence, there's so much interaction happening in all of this. And so when we underdo, we are making space for a new way of being to actually show up. And we get to be surprised. Now, in this process of redoing and shifting and becoming something else, there is something that can start to happen. If you remember, I shared last week, 2 weeks ago with my Qigong, that I was experiencing sort of little aches and pains and twitches and twinges as I let go of old habits and as new habits began to step in. And that process in unity is what we call chemicalization. And chemicalization happens when we have a new awareness, a new spiritual understanding is coming online, and it comes in contact with an old understanding, with an old way of being. And when that happens, what we might begin to experience is some sort of dissonance or an unsteadiness. Now, for me, that unsteadiness was literally in my body, right? Heightened emotions. As I would do certain movements in Qigong, I'd find myself bursting into tears. Physical conditions, those aches, those pains. Now, this can be happening if you're having, it doesn't have to be a physical transformation you're in. It could be a mental, an emotional, a spiritual upliftment. Let's say you even start a new job. And as you start that new job and you're invited to expand and to grow into a new understanding of who you are and what your capacities are, you might feel a little dissonance. Well, I used to do that. Well, what do I do now? You might feel a little unsteady, unsure. You might have heightened emotions. And you certainly can develop physical conditions because remember, we are all one, so there is this beautiful connection and interplay between the brain, neurological system, our body temple, and our understanding of the world. So just as this process of chemicalization can happen. It doesn't have to happen. In fact, the more you practice this process of releasing and letting go, the less intense and overwhelming I have found the process of chemicalization to be. But as we started by saying that we have this macro experience of bringing in the new, and I wanted to bring it into the micro, well, let's bring it back to the macro, because that type of chemicalization can also be happening on a cultural level. It can be happening on that macro level. And if you think about what's going on in our world right now as we are up-leveling and we have this new consciousness and we have this older understanding, and they are in a mix right now, and we have dissonance, we have unsteadiness, we have heightened emotions, and we certainly have sort of physical expressions to what we are as a community connected into with this chemicalization. Now, the good news, I love to give the good news. The good news is that the chemicalization process is actually a really good sign because it means that transformation is happening. And as Misa sang so beautifully in our community song, we get to continually rise up. We get to continually rise up again and again. And each time the needle moves, each time consciousness expands. So my invitation to all of us is to have faith in the process. And what I mean by that is that as I shared my story 2 weeks ago about Doggy, I shared how I saw Doggy, so I was able to let go of my old stuffed animals because I knew what was coming. And that's a lot easier way to let go. But I'm inviting you to not have faith in the Doggy, whatever the Doggy is for you, whatever it is that you think that you want. I'm inviting you to have faith in this process, this regenerative process that is continually calling forth our highest and our best. This regenerative process that we can see all around us in the leaves that fall from the trees and then they bloom again in the spring, to the snake that sheds its skin again and again and again. This is the invitation to have faith in the process itself. And the more you trust this process, the more you say yes to allowing yourself to let go, to be open and receptive, to be willing to stand in beginner's mind and to cultivate a new awareness, to cultivate that capacity by underdoing, by having a very relaxed intention. You don't need to effort. You don't need to push. The divinity that you are is seeking to reveal itself. You just have to get out of the way. And that leads us into a new understanding, which then becomes our status quo. And the cycle begins all over again. That is what I invite you to have faith in. So that when the chemicalization may be stirred up within you or within the world around us, that you can anchor it within the truth that this is a sign of transformation. This is a sign of a new understanding. And that, can we just surrender into that, into our greatest and our highest good? So at this time, let's just take all of this into our time of meditation.